which is an opportunity just to guide this conversation in a particular direction, though of course we have our own answers to this following question. And that is that why have trillions of dollars been spent on this enormous hidden network?
I don't know, but I can assure the listeners there are many underground bases, many. I have listed some of the ones from the public record. Of course, there's the well-known one, well-known underground workings at Area 51 in Nevada, and I'm told also at Fallon Air Force Base and at the Mid-South Naval Base just north of Memphis, Tennessee. Here in Texas at Fort Hood, which is an Army base, also at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and of course at Sandia and Kirtland Air Force Base in the Albuquerque area, at Los Alamos in northern New Mexico. I mean, there's lots of these things, and they're all over the country, on the East Coast, the West Coast, and the interior of the country. And so there's no question of that. I also have I'll get to your question in a minute, Bill. There's also, I'm also accumulating an increasing body of evidence, circumstantial to be sure, because I don't have direct proof unless and until some of the insiders come out and start speaking publicly and unequivocally. We won't have that direct proof, but the circumstantial case I'm building strongly points in the direction of an unknown number of deep-sea bases, too, and by that I mean down in the bedrock beneath the ocean floor. I'm talking about manned installations, which could be run by government agencies, military agencies, corporations, criminal syndicates, fraternal organizations, you name it, all of that and more. And the technology exists to do that. I have the plans for doing that, which go back decades, almost 40 years or more now. So as to why all this is being done, I have been given different reasons, and I have some conjectures of my own. Number one, in the beginning, a lot of it was militarily motivated, in part as the United States developed nuclear weapons, and then other countries too. There was a desire to protect certain key command, control, and communication systems by burrowing deep underground. Also, storing weapons deep underground. There's quite a lot of that. Also as arcs, if you will, to protect certain alleged key personnel in the event of natural disasters or a nuclear apocalypse. The idea was that they would ride it out underground. Part of it may have to do with building shelters for so-called extraterrestrials or aliens. Again, I can't prove that, but there is a body of evidence which points in that direction, much of it anecdotal, but I don't dismiss it necessarily. It's there. Also, to hide things. And you ask, what things? Oh, well, things like money and gold, for example. If you have billions or even trillions of dollars worth of gold, platinum, uranium, currency, or maybe even more exotic things we don't know about, you put them underground and perhaps very deep underground to give yourself a literal, physical, extra layer of security. In the case of an undersea base, you would even have yet another level of security of hundreds or maybe even thousands of seawater, so you would greatly restrict access only to those whom you knew were coming, or even if you didn't know they were coming, there would be a very small number of agencies or individuals that would have the technology to gain access. So those are some of the reasons. There may be others that I'm not aware of. I once asked one of my sources, whom I perceived as particularly knowledgeable, and some of them are, and the answer I got was, well, if potentially, say hypothetically, you had a change in the physics of rotation of the Earth, i.e. a global crustal slippage, for example, or a pole shift, then you might want to be in a secure underground facility and ride out the 5,000-foot tidal waves that might go sloshing around the planet, that type of thing. Or, in the event that the Earth moves into an area of the galaxy where there's a lot of space dust, or rogue planetoids, comets, asteroids, that type of thing, you might want to be underground. Of course, if there were a nuclear apocalypse, you might like to try to ride that out underground. If there were a catastrophic climate change of some kind, being underground might be of some assistance for a matter of months or years, though I guess sooner or later you would have to come topside. So those were some of the kinds of things that were mentioned to me as justification for some of the underground facilities. But I will tell you, this entire area is fraught with secrecy and high security. And some of the most powerful companies in the Fortune 500 are involved. There are just oodles and scads and bushel baskets full of money involved in making and maintaining these facilities. There are unknown numbers of thousands of people involved in building, maintaining, and working in these facilities. There are myriad
well, actually,
agencies.
Richard, I have a question on that note, because there's a couple things that they're doing there. They're
Yes.
doing experimentation that they don't want the rest of the world to know about. That's
True.
The underground base experimentation is probably one of the key things. Certainly, the Dulce stories come out of all of that. And also the fact that you've got individuals that disappear, scientists, engineers, all kinds of microbiologists, for example, that are pronounced dead, disappear with no traces. There's evidence of people just leaving everything they have and suddenly being gone. And, it doesn't take, rocket scientists to figure out where they might actually be taken.
Well, I agree, and thank you for pointing that up. One of the things that I discovered during the course of my research, I was interviewing someone on another topic entirely, and out of nowhere, this guy, who, by the way, is a professional engineer, out of nowhere, just out of the clear blue, this guy blurted out to me, I've been underground at Los Alamos. We weren't talking about Los Alamos. We weren't talking about New Mexico. He just blurted this out. I was sitting in his office, looking over this mahogany desk, and he said, I've been to Los Alamos, and I've been underground there. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yes. And I said, well, tell me about it. And he said, well, I'm good friends with someone who has a very high level of security in the federal system of classification. And I had occasion one time to accompany him to Los Alamos on his official business. And so I was privileged to go everywhere he went. And I can tell you, this guy told me that at Los Alamos, 75% of what is there is underground. And I said, oh, really? Because I've been to Los Alamos, and it's pretty big. I mean, they have a lot of buildings there. But he was telling me, look, what you see on the top is, like 25% of what's there. Most of it is underground. And so I said, well, how deep does it go? And he said, really deep. And I said, how deep? He said, well, the deepest part of it is 1 mile, although he didn't go down to the deepest levels, but he did go to some of the, moderately deep underground stuff. And so he told me that there's just a lot underground at Los Alamos, and I wasn't surprised to hear that. Now, I can tell you, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, that the Department of Energy is the largest research into human genetics on the planet. And that one of the greatest centers of genetic research is at Los Alamos, New Mexico. And usually people think about Los Alamos, New Mexico in terms of energy research or nuclear research, atomic weapons, and so forth. Those kinds of things do take place there. But a huge amount of genetic research takes place there as well. And I think that, coupled with the stories of genetic engineering taking place underground, must strongly suggest, at the least, that there's a lot of genetic engineering research taking place at Los Alamos, quite possibly a good deal of it underground. I can't prove that, but I strongly suspect it.
And Dan Burish has actually been underground at Los Alamos. I just wanted to throw that out.
What's interesting to me here, Richard, is the numbers. Because if you've got a facility that extends a mile underground, that's 5,000 feet. You're talking about an underground skyscraper that's 5,000 feet high.
Oh, yes. Well, let me tell you.
Haven't got.
They're huge. I was talking to one of my sources one day about this very issue, about the size of underground facilities. And some of my books, I've given examples that you can glean from the open literature in the scientific and civil engineering literature, even for